Well, what a weekend of quarter-final rugby at the World Cup. Wasn't that absolutely amazing? There was some fantastic rugby games. So I don't think we've seen that level of rugby at a Rugby World Cup in the quarterfinals before. I just think that was absolutely superb. If you can remember a time where we had better games than that, let me know. I'd be really interested to hear. Look, in this video we're starting to head towards semi-final weekend, and I wanted to get in early with some of my early thoughts around what I think is going to happen. And in this video I want to talk about England and their potential chances of going further in this year's Rugby World Cup. G'day and welcome to Inside Rugby. If you haven't been here before, my name is Mark. I am a Kiwi rugby fan living here in beautiful Cancun in Mexico. And I started this YouTube channel about 3 or 4 months ago. Decided to just talk about my favourite sport, rugby. And here we are talking about the Rugby World Cup. And what a Rugby World Cup it has been, and in particular for a number of teams in this year's competition. And those 4 teams have got through to the semi-finals this coming weekend. And I wanted to talk a little bit in this video about England, because we've been focusing on those big 4 that are on the other side of the draw for a long time, most of us, and it's time now to put a little bit more emphasis into what could happen for England in their next game. And if they win that, of course, they're only 1 game away from being in the final of this year's Rugby World Cup. Now, I have a huge amount of South African and New Zealand followers on this channel, so it's no surprise to me that those 2 supporting groups will be making sure that their feelings are felt when it comes to their 2 teams getting through to the final and meeting each other in what I'm sure would be an epic clash. But we should never underestimate an Argentinian team against New Zealand, and we should perhaps never underestimate what England could pull off against the South African Springboks. But in talking about England, why don't we go back and have a look at that game against Fiji, and just I'll share some thoughts around what came out of that game for me for England. First of all, I think England started really well in that game. They showed a desire and a hunger that I hadn't seen in them for a while, and a passion to actually take Fiji on and run the ball. And I thought that was quite exciting in the first 5 or 10 minutes of that game. And they came with power, they came with intent, and they came with purpose. And I thought that was a really good thing from an English fan perspective as well. I think the English fans would have been really pleased to see England using that style of energy in the opening minutes of that game. Now, Fiji is always a tough opponent. Yeah, they can play that Harlem Globetrotter style rugby, and there's probably no team in the world that's able to defend accurately against them when they're in that style of play. But unfortunately for Fiji, that doesn't last for 18 minutes. And when they come up against teams that have got slightly better structures, better organisation and better accuracy, that seems to be their Achilles heel still in World Rugby. And we saw that again in this game against England, I thought. And I'd tipped England to win that game over Fiji. I thought that their structures and that organisation that they have over the course of 80 minutes was going to be enough for them to win, and that was the case in the end. But let's take nothing away from this amazing Fiji team. They did wonderful at this year's tournament to get through to the quarterfinals, and of course they make many people happy, including myself, in the way that they play the game of rugby. And I'm sure they'll come back better still in 4 years' time and really give a big threat at the next year's Rugby World Cup. But I think that's one of the things that they're lacking. The other thing that happened in that game is Owen Farrell got 20 points. He was the pivotal mainstay for England in that game, and it doesn't matter what you think of Owen Farrell as an individual. He really stood up and made sure he was very accurate in that game for England, and as a result of that they could rely on him getting those points from the tee, and he was very effective. So England were able to keep the scoreboard ticking over whenever they had the opportunity. I also thought that England's forwards played really well in that game against Fiji. Earl was massive. He had a big game, and not only was he having a couple of really big breaks in that game, he was very instrumental in the collision breakdown and getting early ball back from England. But I was impressed with England's line defence, particularly around the rucks and the maws. They stopped Fiji from being organised. They didn't allow Fiji to get that fast ball out and both Limani and Kuravoli, when he came on, their halfbacks were under a lot of pressure in that game from England. So England played that part of the game very, very well. And then when the ball went out wide, we saw Tuolangi, of course, and we saw Marchant, and we saw Daly, and we saw Johnny May also getting very, very effective in this game and probably looking better than they have for some time. And I was quite impressed by that. But again, it was the Fiji defence that was letting them down at times. I thought the Tuolangi try was a little bit soft in terms of Fiji just opening up and letting them go. And of course, against the Springboks, I don't think they're going to have the same kind of opportunity, and we saw that amazing defence from the Springboks against France yesterday, which was extremely impressive. So England are going to have a completely different style to look at next weekend against the Springboks. So can England win this Rugby World Cup? Well, they've got two monumental challenges in front of them, and the first one is next weekend on Saturday when they play South Africa. And before we even start talking about England possibly getting to a final, they've got to get over that hurdle from South Africa. Now, South Africa took a lot of energy out of the tank yesterday with that game against France. They'll be hurting, they'll be a little bit sore, and there'll be some weary bones amongst that group because they've had a very, very difficult series heading into where they are in this tournament at the moment. It's going to be interesting to see how much energy is back in the tank for the Springboks. But put that aside for a minute, and if we look at the performance the Springboks put up against France yesterday, it was absolutely fantastic. I thought their line defense was probably the best I've seen in the tournament so far, and they really kept those French players, the ones that have a lot of flair and power out wide, they kept those players quiet for the majority of the game. It was a very impressive game from the Springboks. So then we've got to think about, okay, how could England actually win this game against the Springboks? And I think the way that they could do that is they're going to have to go to their kicking game, and they're going to have to be very, very accurate in that kicking game. So I think one of the things that England needs to work out, first of all, from a strategic point of view, is that if South Africa go to that kicking game that they did against France yesterday, how are they going to combat that? How are they going to compete in the air? How are they going to defend those high kicks, whether they come from the scrum ruck from Cobus Reinhardt or Flaf de Klerk, or whether they come from Manny Lebok or Andre Pollard? That's something England's going to need to work out on, how they defend that particular ball. And then how do they use that ball? And we saw how France messed that up yesterday. They didn't compete too well for those balls. The balls became 50-50 and South Africa was able to pounce on it. So I think we're going to see Farrell using the ball long into South African territory and try and get strategic set piece set up for England where they can score points, and those points are probably going to come from penalties, drop goals, and if they can get through for a try or two, then I think that's what England's going to count on. So I think we're going to see a game from England that's going to try and keep the score fairly low, because it's going to be a kicking affair. I think that's the only way they're going to be able to get over the top of this South African team, if they're able to do that at all. What we've learnt in this year's Rugby World Cup is you can't write off any team, that's for sure. And everybody will be saying that South Africa is going to crush England next weekend. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think we need to sit down and look at how England could possibly get a win over South Africa. I think it's going to be extremely difficult for them. I think South Africa is building into this tournament really, really beautifully. And if nothing else, I think that win over France yesterday would have given them a lot of energy. So even if their fuel tanks are feeling a little bit empty, I think by having a win in a big game like that, it actually gives you more adrenaline to go on. And I think the same for the All Blacks against Ireland. I think that win over them, it would have felt like winning a final, and therefore it's given them a lot of energy. But you've got to bounce back after a quarter final, and you've only got a short turnaround to play these games. So the England-South Africa games on Saturday night, the All Blacks versus Argentina's on Friday night, and those two teams that had those big wins have got to really turn around and keep focus for this weekend. England's come through the so-called easier side of the draw in this tournament, and as a result of that, it's probably allowed their players to be a little bit fresher indeed. Now, a lot of people might say, well, hang on a minute, Fiji came storming back in that game in the second half. They scored 2 tries, they got close on the scoreboard again, and that is the case. But I'll tell you what, I don't think that was so much of England falling off in this game. I think it was just Fiji's brilliance. And as I said earlier in the video, it doesn't matter what team Fiji plays and how good their defense is, when you start playing that Harlem Globetrotter style of rugby, Fiji can get through any defensive line in the world and score those types of tries that they scored against England. So England had enough on the scoreboard. I think they controlled the game really well in the last few minutes as well. They didn't give Fiji a sniff there at the end, and I think that's what is good about this England team. I think they have the capacity to do that. Whether they can do that against the Springboks, it's going to be really, really tough, isn't it? And I think they've got to get themselves at least in parity on the scoreboard. Otherwise, the Springboks might run away with this one. So I don't know whether the English forwards can compete effectively over 80 minutes with the Springboks teams, but they don't need to dominate in the forwards. They've just got to get enough ball so that Owen Farrell and those English backs can do what they need. And again, if I think this is going to be a kicking game against the Springboks, then 40-45% possession will be enough for England to be able to execute that game. It's going to be around accuracy and how they can get that ball down deep into the Springbok territory to set up opportunities to go for goal. And we're going to see England doing pick and rolls at the maul and getting close into the 22 and then looking for penalties. And I think that's the way they're going to go against the Springboks team. And if they do see a lapse in the Springboks defence, then sure, they're going to go for their tries as well. But I think we're only going to see that when the English are down deep into attack in the Springboks territory and they've had several phases of play to try and break open that South African defence. The English team is not like the French team. They don't have this super flair out wide in their backs that can run coast to coast tries. I think they're going to rely on having to score points while they're inside the Springbok half. And that's mainly going to come through the boot of Owen Farrell. So look for some 50-22s as well. I think that's going to be a strategic intent from England to try and put themselves deep into the Springbok territory to get that ball back into the line out and then to have rolling mauls as well. We saw Courtney Laws doing very, very well. Maro Itoje played very, very well, I thought, in the weekend. Also Chesham had a big game against Fiji, and also Earl as well. And I think if those guys can really step up again, Curry was in there as well, but I think if he gets in there and has a big game, then England have an opportunity to get at least enough ball to play into that kicking strategy. So I think that's the way that they're probably going to go about it. So as I say, these are just my early thoughts as we get into this week, heading towards the semi-finals, watching the Fiji game against Italy and seeing them win that one and the dominance of Owen Farrell in that particular game. And then watching that mighty game between the Springboks and France as well. I'm sure as the week progresses and when the teams are announced, we'll see a little bit more about what the strategy the Springboks are going to bring to this game against England. It's going to be interesting to see what Jacques Nienaber and Rassie Erasmus go for in terms of their bench setup. We've seen them playing around with that in this tournament, being very innovative, and I can't wait to see what they're going to do against England. And England also are going to have their own strategy. I said it in one of my previous videos, I don't know how Henry Arundel is kept out of this English team. He's a try-scoring machine. And we saw Daly and Johnny May play in the weekend for England. They did pretty well, I'm sure. But I'd love to see Henry Arundel in this team for England. I just think he's one of those guys, like a Cheslin Colby or a Kurtley Arendse, can really set a game alight and score a try from nowhere. And if England are going to rely on that one moment of brilliance in this game to try and beat South Africa, then surely you need a guy like Henry Arundel in your team. But that's just my personal thoughts. Let me know what you think about that in the comments. Do you think that Borthwick should be putting in Henry Arundel into this English team to take on the Springboks in the weekend? And I'm also interested to hear your thoughts around the forward selection for this game against the Springboks. I think the Springbok forwards are going to come into this game with a favourite tag on them. So how does England beat these South African forwards, or how do they compete enough to get enough ball to do what they need to do in this game? I'd be really interested to know in the comments below from you guys and girls. So there we go, there's my initial thoughts around England, whether they can win this Rugby World Cup. I think it's a very long shot indeed. If they're going to get past two teams like South Africa and New Zealand or Argentina, then they're going to have to play Super Rugby for 2 games in a row. The first hurdle is the Springboks next Saturday. They've got to overcome that one first, even if they have a chance to get into the final. And they're going to have to play their best game of the tournament, there's no doubt about it, to get past South Africa. So let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on that game early in the week. I'll be back with more videos as the week goes on, heading into the semi-finals of the tournament. Just wanted to throw this one out there this morning and see what you're all thinking after a fantastic weekend of quarterfinals. I'd love you to hit the subscribe button, support me on this channel. Plenty more videos coming about rugby from all over the world, and I'll be back again soon with some more. Until then, stay safe, stay well everyone, and get ready for what's going to be an awesome semi-final weekend at the 2023 Rugby World Cup in France. Until next time, bye for now.